started dropping shells, burst in the trees all over us. And got out in an open field, and they were really dropping the mortar and shells on us. And I heard the name called medic many times. You can't describe the kind of terror that comes. Like in that ambush and when that tank started up, and at other times, the shells dropping, I didn't see how I could ever survive. If they had told me back then I'd live to be 100, I would never have believed it. I'm Truman Christian. I was a farm boy at first. I didn't have to go in the service. They needed farm boys. They'd drafted so many that they left the farming industry lacking. I wanted to go where the action was. I sure did. Well, in basic training, of course, you had marching and shots and all of that. And at first, learning how to salute. But I was trained to shoot, throw grenades, shoot the bazooka, a little grease gun, machine gun. And after a while, I began to realize they were putting me with the mortar and the machine gun, the main training. Here, a little farm boy, never saw anything gigantic like those ships. We didn't have them on our lakes and ponds. And wasn't long that we were loaded up. So we had movies and passed our time away. I wasn't much of a gambler, but there's a lot of crap shooting going on. But I did remember Liverpool, somewhere in the docking there, and then down to the harbor, Hampton. That's where we went across with the channel and a British ship to Le Havre. At Le Havre, we then were loaded in 40 and 8 boxcars. So we went across country. The next day we got on 2.5-ton trucks, convoy going on towards Belgium. Our division was a green outfit, and we replaced the 2nd Division. It was supposed to be kind of a easy area, just kind of there's a little bit of, maybe a night, a little bit of firing here and there, but it wasn't much. I had some scary times just getting up to the division, some close calls. A buddy of mine was killed, and then on the way to the front lines, it was snowing heavy, and finally we got to a place where we had to go through a pine forest. As I say, the snow was deep, and it's night. You know, after night, how you see, because of the brightness of the snow, you can see the troops moving. And evidently the Germans saw this troop movement. They really loaded up 88 shells and tree bursts, and that's when Caraway was killed. Went through there with all that happening, got out in an open field, and they were really dropping the mortar and shells on us. And we were new and terrified, hunkered down in the snow, and officers and non-coms would come along and they'd kick us out, get back in the forest. It stopped, and I ended up in a shell-torn house. Cold, it was cold. And they wanted some guys to go back and carry the wounded out and so forth. I didn't think I had the energy left to do it, but I went. I remember one guy I'd traveled with on the trucks and got acquainted with him. Well, he was dying. I could hear in his neck. And I thought, after he was killed, I thought, this war's going to be rough. There was 106th Line Division, a new green outfit. The 2 regiments were wiped out, and about a fourth of the one I was in. 424th Regiment, D Company. I didn't want to be a machine gunner, but I ended up being a machine gunner. He said the average life of a machine gunner in combat was 3 minutes. Kind of fun and basic to shoot it, not in combat. And then you had the gunner that sat at the gun, and then you had the second gunner who sat by him and fed this belt 30 caliber bullet through the machine gun. One would carry the receiver, the gun. Another would carry the tripod on the, I think I got ridges in my shoulders. And they had our packs, and others carried the ammo. You pull the trigger, you had to set your sights, windage and elevation, for your target. There were times when we shoot tracers for a great big campaign along the Siegfried line. Yeah, sometimes we burned our barrels out because we didn't dare stop. I had an emplacement dugout, and there was a bridge out there 1,500 yards or farther, and I was to cover that bridge. Then the next day they dropped all these smoke bombs, and you couldn't see anything. The Germans opened up with everything, cannons and guns, everything, screaming mimes, everything. I mean, it was a blast. And I had to shoot that machine gun, and I didn't want to raise my head up. So I just reached up and got hold of the trigger, just pulled the trigger. It was stationed. I don't know whatever happened on that bridge, I could never see. One of the first missions was pretty rough. We got up early, loaded up in these trucks, and it was eerie, snow and all, but we had 3 villages to take where there were Germans among the Belgians. And so the first 2 weren't too difficult, but I remember the third one, I think it was WWII, and we were firing down in the village with our machine guns and rifles and mortars. And I saw 3 or 4 Germans running out of the corner into the woods. And I realized later that those Germans that went out of there went ahead and set up an ambush. I couldn't see, so I started crawling out. I was the first one to crawl out. And I crawled a little ways, and I looked under the pine branches, and there's 2 Germans faced that close. That was startling. So, but the firing and gunning was all going on, and they were shooting at, popping snow all around me. And then it wasn't long that the guys behind me were shooting. They couldn't see me. So I was going to get killed by my own men. So I went back and got some of the guys to come with me. And then, so I got these guys coming out into the woods, and there's more space, and there were Germans everywhere. And so I got a bunch of them, Germans. They were just scattered everywhere. They said, one of them said they saw me shoot 6 down. They were shooting at us, and I was shooting at them. And I shot enough that the Germans started surrendering to me. And they'd stand up to surrender me and then get shot down by somebody else. That was awful. I never got over that. We went from there and out into, I guess you call it a tree nursery. They said, just halt, we got to stop. There's a German machine gun nest up ahead we got to knock out. Well, while that was happening, a German tank down in the village, we could hear it start up. Well, that put your heart, that was terrifying. And that evening, I saw Lieutenant Huddleston being carried out on a stretcher. He'd been shot in the legs, and he was dying, and he's crying, and he wanted to be back with his men. But I learned later that night he died from the wounds and the exposure. I remember thinking at the end of that day, when the battle all shut down, we had to sleep in the snow, and I thought, this isn't fair. Back on the farm, when I did a day's work, we went back where it was warm and comfortable. Here we got to sleep out in the snow tonight. There was a guy named Tony Rudge who drove a Jeep, brought our mail and chow to us. Tony came to my squad. He said, would someone go down with me and help me turn that Jeep around? It was snow on the ground. He said, if I can get the Jeep turned around before they start firing at me, I can get up over the hill and escape. So I went down with him. They saw us. And by then they had zeroed in on that Jeep. When I'm standing in the back corner, a Jeep has little brackets that carry the canvas. I'm stuck back corner, facing that way, and Tony is in the driver's seat. And I mean, they splattered that Jeep. A few days later, Tony was bringing us our chow. We were up in the forest, and we heard a big explosion. And he'd hit a mine and blew the Jeep and him and everything. We lost a good guy. We would dig these foxholes for 2. We'd tear off the pine boughs and make it a little softer. They were still wet. Well, the motor pool guys, they came to see us with a trailer full of straw. That was luxury. I mean, we put that straw in those foxholes. Talk about foxhole big luxury. I wanted Jim. He's a big, powerful hillbilly from Tennessee. And I thought he can help put some logs on top of a foxhole. So we were good foxhole buddies, Jim and I. And so I had the bright idea, Jim, let's cover it with logs, then dig into it from off the side. Bad idea, because before we got it finished, couldn't even get into it. They started dropping shells, bursting the trees all over us. And Jim disappeared. I never knew where he went. So great, just so great. I never thought I could survive it. I'm proud that I got to be in that generation and for all that we did and that we were patriotic. Fact is, I told my sister I shouldn't have. I said, Geneva, I don't think I'll make it back from this war. You have to expect that. But here I was. Oh boy, I don't know, emotions.